A couple of weeks ago, a special advisor and star candidate for Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party, retired General Andrew Leslie, made some startling comments about Israel's war against the terrorist group Hamas. Leslie was the head of the army for part of Canada's war in Afghanistan, where Canadian troops spent time killing Taliban terrorists. So you'd think he would be sympathetic to killing Hamas terrorists. I mean, potato, potato, right? And you'd think he'd also be careful about making casual slurs against the armed forces of a fellow democracy fighting urban warfare against unmarked, ununiformed terrorists who hide amongst civilians. I mean, the Canadian forces were also wrongfully accused of war crimes by anti-Canadian propagandists. Those accusations were eventually proved false, but only long after the unfair damage was done to Canada's reputation. So it was quite newsworthy when Leslie made these comments at a political meet and greet. So just to set the stage, this was at a public political event where people were invited to come and get to know Andrew Leslie as a candidate and ask him questions. Here, listen to him talking about Israel.
They go in, they obviously get involved in street fighting. Hamas throws more and more resources at it, more casualties are caused by the Israeli using very heavy weapon systems, firing indiscriminately onto Palestinian women and children. You know what the body count is now. So Israel has actually lost this war.
Hang on. Firing indiscriminately into women and children? Of course, with any war, there are unfortunate civilian casualties. Canada has, unfortunately, killed innocent women and children in Afghanistan too, not on purpose, of course, but because war is hell and things go wrong. But more to the point, because terrorists like the Taliban we were fighting in Afghanistan and Hamas that Israel's fighting in Gaza, they deliberately hide amongst civilians. But to say that Israel deliberately doesn't give a damn and indiscriminately kills women and children isn't just factually wrong. It's a lie, and it's a lie Leslie knows is a lie. Israel, in fact, took great steps to protect Palestinian women and children that the Canadian forces in Afghanistan under Leslie's own command never did. For example, Israel would telephone every single cell phone in a neighborhood in Gaza, telling people to get out because they were about to shoot there. Israel would drop leaflets in Arabic in advance of bombings, and they would often call off attacks if Hamas had civilian human shields in sight. Now, Leslie knew all this, but he smeared Israel nonetheless. He effectively accused Israel of war crimes, just because he thought he could get a vote out of it? Oh, but it gets worse. Listen.
You got to kill him, you got to kill him. Hey, I got no problems with that. But Palestinian women and children are taking refuge in a UN-designated compound. Come on. Oh, it was an accident. Sorry. It doesn't matter anymore.
Now, it is a fact that Hamas uses human shields. They not only admit to it, they broadcast it openly, calling upon Palestinians to sacrifice themselves to protect Hamas rockets. It's brutal. And they do it, including on United Nations property. Hamas literally hides its rockets in a United Nations school in Gaza. 3 times during the war, rockets were discovered on a UN school site. So the first thing is, does Andrew Leslie recommend that Israel not take out terrorists if they're based at a UN facility? Is that his military advice? Would he really follow that advice in Afghanistan? If the Taliban were in a mosque or a school or a government building, he wouldn't attack them? Of course he would, and he did. So again, the first point is he knows what he's saying is baloney. But that accusation again, claiming that Israel didn't kill civilians by accident, but that they did it on purpose and lied about it, that's another slur, another war crimes accusation. Now, this is big news. It goes to the Liberal strategy of pandering to pro-Hamas voters. The Liberals know that most Canadian Jews are going to vote for Stephen Harper, so why not go for the anti-Israel vote instead, right? Now, this recording was made public by The Sun a couple of days ago. Huge news. But it was buried by the media party. They hate this story, just like they hate the stories about Justin Trudeau visiting all those extremist mosques in Canada, looking to get votes, even at the anti-Semitic mosques, like the Wahhabi Mosque in Montreal. But there's one more wrinkle in this story. The girl who asked Andrew Leslie this question was a conservative. She's the one who went public with this first. To which the response is, so what? It wasn't a gotcha question. It wasn't a trap. It wasn't a private conversation taken out of context. It was at a public meeting at a public event with a public candidate who freely said what he said. But because it was a conservative who asked the question, the media party went nuts. Not only did they not cover Andrew Leslie's bizarre and malicious attack on Israel, but they rebranded the question itself as some sort of scandal. Seriously, the Canadian press, the big news agency that most Canadian newspapers use, They did not write a story about Leslie's anti-Israel remarks, but they wrote about the identity of the girl who asked Leslie the question. Look at this. Tories' use of provocateurs to entrap liberals blasted as unethical. Seriously, you have to get 9 paragraphs down in this story before you learn what Leslie actually said, accusing Israel of firing indiscriminately at women and children, because the story is actually about those provocative, unethical conservatives. Seriously. Get the first sentence of that CP story. Let me read it to you. Federal conservatives are putting a new twist on an old tactic, spying on political opponents. Seriously, so asking a public question at a public forum of a public candidate is spying? Are you serious? The CBC ran that same CP story with their even more extreme headline. Look at that. Nixonian Tory entrapment tactics. Wow. Nixonian. Wasn't the thing about Richard Nixon that people actually broke into the Democratic headquarters legally and stole files? And a girl asking a public candidate at a public question, that's Nixonian? And it's entrapment, like he was tricked into answering the way he did. Are you serious? Oh, totally serious. Here's Jason Fiquet of the Ottawa Citizen. What does he think about the news that a retired Canadian general is accusing Israel of war crimes? Well, he thinks the answer is irrelevant. The question should never have been asked. Here's his tweet. He says, "Welcome to gutter politics, dirty but effective." That's what he actually wrote. Huh. Well, let me ask you about that. Gutter politics? Asking a retired general, touted as Trudeau's advisor, at a public on-the-record event, what he thinks about the Israel-Hamas war is gutter politics? Really? Dirty but effective? Really? Dirty how? Was there a break-in? Was the question asked unfairly? No. I'll tell you why Joan Bryden of CP and Jason Fiquet of the Ottawa Citizens think it's dirty. Because it embarrassed their friends in the Liberal Party. That's why. Because they would never ask a real question like that of a Liberal. That's why. They prefer to ask Justin Trudeau about how handsome he is. They not only don't like the question, they don't like that someone other than their little tribe, their little class of high priests of journalism, did more journalism than they did. Dirty, they called it, seriously. But of course, any question that embarrasses a Liberal is called dirty by the media party. But what about the second part of Fiquet's insult? Dirty but effective. Well, what does that mean? See, Fiquet is grudgingly acknowledging that the answer damaged the Liberals. That's what he means. The dirty trick of asking a simple question yielded the effect of embarrassing the Liberals, which is precisely why the media party works so hard at not doing that. That's the media party, the same media party that will offer up thousands of dollars of cash as a bounty for secretly recorded videos of Conservative Mayor Rob Ford about his private life, not his public duties. That's ethical journalism by the media party, but a public question in a public forum to a Liberal about public policy, dirty, Nixonian entrapment. Oh, one final piece of news. Colin Horgan, a journalist who made a specialty of attacking journalists, conservatives for years, he's made it official. He's quitting his role as journalist and becoming a full-time Justin Trudeau staffer. I mean, why bother, right? Wasn't he serving them well enough beforehand? Are they going to give him any back pay for prior services rendered? Oh, my friends, there is a media party in this country. Paul Wells of Maclean's Magazine, Althea Raj of the Huffington Post, Joan Bryden of the Canadian Press, Jason Fiquet of the Ottawa Citizen. They love Justin Trudeau. Now, that's fine. But then they pretend to be neutral, just the facts journalists. That's duplicitous. And you see it the most in their rage. Rage that someone got through their protective barrier around Trudeau and his team and managed to ask a real question. And that real question yielded a real answer. Journalists are supposed to love answers and revelations. And the more spicy, the better. Journalists are supposed to love gaffes and news and controversy. You'd think they would be all over this one, but they're not real journalists. They're spin doctors working for their boy hero, Justin Trudeau. And whether they do so from the press gallery, like Colin Horgan, or from Trudeau's office, like Colin Horgan, it's really all the same, isn't it? You just can't trust the media party.